Here is an introduction to the Sela project, a web app that we are building. This is a mock-up. So first, I want to introduce our name, Sela. You might be very familiar with this word because it is a common musical marker in the Book of Psalms. This word actually occurs 74 times, so it's quite common, and you might have encountered it many times already. But we're actually going to name our project Sela, spelled a little bit differently, with this Hebrew letter instead, and it means a big rock. And that's because our slogan is digging for gems, and our icon and logo is this big rock with a little pickaxe. And so I'm hoping that this is the rock or the place that we will be digging for gems. Our whole web app is built around this principle that highlighting repeated words or ideas reveal the structure of the poem. And these repeated words shows how ideas are connected and developed over the course of the poem. And even most famous poetic devices in Hebrew poetry, for example, chiasm and inclusio, both of these are really built on the repetition of words. And so here is the interface of our web app. First thing you'll notice on the top left is this language toggle. Our app will be available in both English and Hebrew. This will be especially handy if you're learning Hebrew as well. But even without Hebrew, all the tools will help make this process of digging for gems very fun and possible in the English. So next we have the passage selector. For the purpose of this introduction, we're going to look at Psalms 29. And in our first release of our web app, we plan to have mostly only the Psalms available, but then later we'll hope to include all the data to have the rest of the Old Testament as well. Next on the right, you'll see four big buttons. These are categories for different tools, okay, which we'll look at later as well. And so here, Psalms 29, now that it's opened, you'll see these words displayed like this. Important to note that you'll see these gray boxes, and each box represents one Hebrew word. And this is also faithfully preserving the word order that's in the original Hebrew as well. You'll notice that some of these boxes have multiple English words in it because it's not uncommon that one Hebrew word is translated to multiple English words. And so these boxes will show the word count. And so so we'll look at the first tool here, structure. When you click on it, you'll see more tools kind of open up. In the original writing, there are some clear divisions of stanzas, different sections. And so as you're reading this in English, you might say perhaps that here in verse 4, the voice is the start of a new stanza. So what you do here is you click the voice, and then you would click new stanza. And this will move everything over to the right side and also put a vertical line here to show that this is what you consider a new stanza. And so from here, you might read verse 1 to 2 and think these four lines belong together. And so it is its own subsection, which is called a new strophe. And so you might drag and highlight these four lines and click new strophe. And then it will put a gray background to show that this is what you consider a new strophe. And so repeating this process a bit further, you might end up dividing the poem into something that looks like this. And next tool to introduce is this block size, which I'm very excited for. When you click it, all the words will become the same size. And this is useful because now you can very clearly see the word count in each line and also get a sense of the rhythm that when you read the text this way, give unto Yahweh sons, you mighty ones, give unto Yahweh glory and strength, that you'll notice this. I think as you read it, you'll intuitively kind of feel the rhythm of it. Some scholars and some writers are convinced that there's no such thing as like a rhythm officially in Hebrew poetry. But I think even here, these first four lines, it seems quite clear to me that there's an intention to keep a 4-word pattern. And even at verse 5 to verse 6, you see this little block with a hyphen in it. That's because there's a common Hebrew word that is never translated into any words in English, and this very short word is a grammatical marker. And so even in the original writing, you'll see this word has a little hyphen to connect these two words as if they're read with the same one beat kind of rhythm. And so having that in mind, verse 5 to verse 6 is also, I think, very clearly this kind of 4-word or 4-beat kind of rhythm, which makes verse 7 stand out because it is uniquely 5 lines when no other spots in a poem are 5 lines. And then at the end of verse 9, you'll see this sudden word reduction, that there's a 2-word pattern that kind of signals the end to the section, almost like a slowing down, if you would. Yeah, so getting rid of the block size and changing back to our original, where each block is the size of however many English words would fit. So the rest of our introduction, we'll kind of look at it in this view. So the next tool is this motif that as you click on it, you'll see 2 more new tools. Then you could click suggestions, and it'll show words that are repeated. The words with the same Hebrew root, these are direct repetitions. And there's also another tool for synonyms, related words, or words with similar meaning. And so here you'll see that the word Yahweh shows up 18 times in this poem. You can simply click Yahweh and it'll highlight all the words that are Yahweh. And then perhaps you might click the voice and click glory. This process automatically picks a color for you, but you also have the freedom to change the color if you want. For example, you might say, I want all the glories to change to a different color. So you'll click this, and then you can click this fill, or like the box color. And then you could pick a different color, perhaps red. Okay. And then so you'll change all the text to red with this word glory in it. From here, you might notice that this string of words in the middle are unique because they kind of stand alone. It's a verse with a single row, a single line in it. So you might want to perhaps highlight all of them. So you'll drag and highlight all 5 words. And then perhaps you could click here to change the border color. Perhaps we'll change it to red. And so you can see all the boxes have changed to red. You can again do the same thing and change the word color as well. Perhaps we'll change to yellow, orange. And so you have a lot of flexibility as a user, how you want to color things. And there's 3 ways for you to color things. But a better way to color this whole section is perhaps a different way. So here we have a undo button. So we'll click it a few times, and then you'll end up, this is where we were. You can also click the entire background and then change the fill of the entire background as well, like this. And so you can keep track of your thought process. And so moving along, this is, for example, how I might do some coloring to kind of show the patterns. Here, perhaps I'll notice that you have cedars and then cedars, but then the next time it's like cedars of Lebanon. And here we have wilderness of Kadesh. You'll kind of notice, oh, this looks like some kind of important pattern. So you could select Lebanon, and then while holding control, select more words. And then you can change the border color to the same one if you'd like. Something like this, so you can keep track of what kind of patterns you see. Then you might notice there are some animals after this cluster of similar words. There's the calf, there's the ox, and then there's another deer here, and you might change this to a different color as well. Yeah, and so already I think we can see some clear patterns of how this poem is arranged, its structural design. For example, there's a word here, strength, and then there's another strength at the end. And then here in this blue section, we have 2 keywords, the word water. And at the end in verse 10, even though there isn't the exact word, but you have the flood, which is very similar. And then another thing to note is that when you click Hebrew here and change the language, all your work will be preserved and you'll be able to switch back and forth. Of course, there's also a login. You could create an account, and that way you can save the work for future. The next thing I want to demonstrate why I think this tool will be very helpful is, for example, here, you can see that these two words in Hebrew, they look nearly identical, and that's because they share the same root. And even in the dictionary entry, they share the same entry. But this one has a dot in it, which makes it into a different form, a different stem, which makes it a stronger action. Okay, and so these two words are translated in English to break and yes, he splinters, which makes it difficult to see that this is actually the identical word in Hebrew, but in Hebrew you can see it's the same word. Same thing with here in verse 8 to 9, you have Yachil, Yachil, and Yacholel. These are the same words in Hebrew, but unfortunately, after translation, we have shake, shake, and then the stronger version of shake can have the meaning of giving birth, which it's kind of makes sense, right? To describe this very difficult process of giving birth as if the whole person is shaking in the process. Yeah, and so these words are also clearly identical in Hebrew, but they look different. They're translated to different words in English. And so our tools with the suggestions of identical words, it would help you to pick these things up and highlight the same color for you. Yeah, so that is our web app. Again, the principle is that highlighting repeated words and ideas reveal the structure of the poem. And so I hope this tool will be very helpful to you all.